It's a good question. It's something I've thought about a lot. I was just me, my DNA. I have a curious mind. Everything I've got into as a kid was like an investigation. So I got into hip hop. I didn't just listen to it casually. I wanted to know who this was, where they were from, what were they saying, and not just the rappers, but graffiti, and it's that nerd mentality of like I wanna understand everything. It's like it's a whole universe.
Hey everybody, welcome to Panel Perspective here on 9 Panel Grid. I'm joined here with Nick from Comic Culture and Stu from Dr. Doom's Fan Club. And we have the pleasure of being joined here today by Shawn Crystal from Inkpulp here. Shawn, how you doing, man?
Good. How you guys doing?
Dude, we're doing fantastic,
Oh
man.
wow.
Doing great.
Dude, I'm so excited here because as of the date of this recording here, you had a huge thing that came down the pipeline, which was the Discord for Inkpulp and the
Yeah.
Patreon for Inkpulp both went live. I'm
Yeah.
really curious, man. What it's been less than a week, if my memory is correct here. What's
Yeah.
the
It's
reception
it's
been
only
like?
been four. We went live Monday. So I mean, we've been building the. I started Ink Pulp Audio probably over 10 years ago now, and that was just an audio only interview thing. And I was one of the first like comic booky people getting into podcasting back then, and it was before video. It was just audio. I luckily had an audio person helping me out with it, but I didn't know what I was doing. I was
Yeah.
just, trying to figure it out. I knew, like, I wanted to record these conversations I was having with artists I knew and put it out there, like personal conversations, craft conversations, stuff
Yep.
I found myself at cons talking to artists about outside of the show. And then, you know, uh, it was I was enjoying it. It just got harder and harder to schedule because I would only do them in person. I wouldn't do them over the internet. This was at a time where it was audio only, like I said. So recording over the internet, it's like, am I really going to have their full attention? Because I
Yeah.
wanted to have very personal, in-depth conversations. So in person just seemed to be best. And so I would schedule them around conventions where I could go to a con, do my con thing, and
Yeah.
then I had to schedule the interviews for like before dinner or right after dinner, which gets really difficult. At first it wasn't terrible. My career was just kind of taking off, and all the artists I knew, their careers were just kind of taking off. But after a few years, when careers were going better and better, it just got harder and harder to schedule, and then I had to figure out another plan. And that's when I came up with an idea where I did a GoFundMe to do, like, I was like, I'm going to do seasons. I'm going to do this outside of a con. I'm going to take trips. So I did a Portland trip and recorded like 7 or 8 episodes on that trip. GoFundMe was so supportive and
Mm.
got me out there. Um, and I did that and then came back, was like, all right, maybe this is the way to go. And as I was trying to figure out the next one, COVID hit.
Oh,
And
Yep.
yeah.
that's when everything changed. But look, this was a blessing in disguise. I mean,
Yeah.
aside from the tragedy of COVID, I'm not trying to minimize that, but for the podcast, this was a blessing. It forced me very quickly. We all started hopping into streams and doing like these
Yeah.
virtual cons, and I was like, I have a podcast. I'll start a YouTube channel, and I'll just start recording us hanging out. I mean, nobody had anything to do.
Yeah.
I was learning to paint. We were all just trapped in our houses. So I was like, let's just get on camera and draw today with my friends. And
Mhm.
it turned into a way to make a living because through my art dealer, he was having these like virtual cons. We were getting commissions. So as I was working on the commissions outside of those streams, I would have my own streams. And through that, I continually upgraded my recording equipment and got really familiar and comfortable. And it got really, I realized the downside of what I was doing as COVID was coming to a close was I was struggling to interview someone. I was trying to do the old Ink Pulp thing where I was interviewing someone while we were both drawing. And I just
Mm.
felt like it wasn't as good as what I was doing before, and it wasn't as good as what was being done by others now. And so it was around that time Eric Canetti and I just started recording conversations through like this with a camera and a mic, because by this time we had the equipment, and I was like, let's just do the podcast again, but let's do it just me and you. And then one day he's like, let's invite Maddie and Matteo Scalera, because we're like a little crew.
Yep.
And we brought Matteo, and Mateo's a huge podcast fan. Like, he listens to podcasts while he draws all day, particularly comedian podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was super excited to, like, he came on just as a guest one day, and then he was just like, I want to do it again. And we were like, wait a minute, we have something here, because people were really responding to the chemistry between the three of us. And we were like, all right, so this is kind of the show now. Like, it's us three. So we did that for a while. Then we started talking about bringing a guest in, and the more it became like, I don't know, I don't want to say professional, because I don't know that word professional, but the more that it became something, not just a totally organic thing, but the more it became like a show, I guess is the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
Eric got super busy and got less and less like interested in that aspect of it. So then Eric lost his job and he just needed to like close everything out and focus, because he has a family. He needed to get a job going. So I was like, Matteo and I will keep it going. So we just kept it going, and it just kept taking off and taking off and taking off. And then Jim was here in Atlanta visiting me, and I really don't remember. This was around the time Ed died.
Mhm.
And Jim was going right from Atlanta to the memorial service for Ed.
Yeah.
And it seemed like none of this was said, none of this was intentional, but it seemed like that kayfabe had left a big hole.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And people were really like missing it and thirsty for something along those lines. That might have been subconscious. It was not a conscious thought. But
Mhm.
Jim and I just started talking about the idea of, hey, look, we're going down this path now of getting away from the mainstream publishers. I mean, not that Jim was already on his own path. I was switching.
Yeah.
So we were talking about doing our own comics and how to get it out there. Jim had just done his last Girl Scout. And guys, if I'm rambling, please.
Oh, no,
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 keep
not
it
at
going,
all,
dude.
please.
I know
Yeah.
this.
Eating
As
shit
a
up.
host, this is the gold right here.
No. You're good.
So Jim had just done his last series through Image, his last Girl Scout miniseries. And I
Mhm.
remember before he did it, I was in Portland, and he was like, should I kickstart it, or should I stay with Image? And
Yeah.
I was on the kickstart train. I was like, dude, you need to get away from Image with this. Like, Image is great if you're Rick Remender, if you're, like Kirkman, and you can form a Skybound. But for someone like Jim, it's a good home, and they'll publish your books, but how much are they going to market it? It's all going to be on you to get the
Yeah.
name out there. And then, I remember they weren't like keeping his stuff in print as much as he had wanted. And I was like, I think you should just kickstart it and then just take control of your own shit. And he didn't. He was unsure about that, and he didn't. But after that, he was like, I think I need to go the Kickstart route. And so we were like, what can we do? Like, everything that had been happening from COVID, from right before COVID to on, for me, was about how can I build my own lane, my own cottage industry, get away from all of this freelance, all these corporate publishers. It was just a very difficult way to make a living. And so I was really looking at Jim as my model of like, here's how you do it. And so it was like, well, what can we do? I was like, well, there seems to be this community forming with the podcast. I would love to build upon that, and we should do a live drawing stream.
Yeah.
And I had pitched that idea to Jim a few years ago. He's just like, I got too much going on. I can't. He's like, I'll come on. When I was doing the COVID stream, Jim was 80% of the time there. And I was like, why don't we just make this a show? He's like, I just have too much going on. Let's just keep it casual. But at this point, Jim was like, let's do this. So he went to Pittsburgh for the memorial service and spoke to Rugg about this idea for a creator-owned book he wanted to do, which is the Savage Street Vigilante.
Yep.
And Rugg was like, you have to do this. And in talking to Rugg and going and being a part of the community memory of Ed up there, I think a lot congealed in Jim's mind, and he came out from that. He's like, let's do this. Let's do it.
That's
And
awesome.
so we just started doing it. And the first show was such a, like, it wasn't like a groundbreaking hit, but for us, it was a massive hit. It was like, we had so much fun. Time flew by. We were like, let's just do an hour. We end up doing 2 hours. Like, it was nothing.
That's how it always works,
Yeah,
though.
been
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And so, but the thing was, the community came out, like, all like that. Why I say there was like this hole left from kayfabe.
Mhm.
We didn't intentionally say, hey, there's a hole, let's go fill it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we did, but our first show, that community started coming in, and the show did great, and it was awesome. So we're like, let's start doing it. And we're like, look, let's spend the first like 6 months or so, just me and you. We will establish the show as us, and then we'll start bringing guests in. So it's not like,
Smart.
well, where's the guest this week? And we
Yeah.
wanted people to really get behind the idea the show is Jim and I, and we'll have a guest sometimes.
Mhm.
So it all kind of took off. And what happened completely organically was the community just became so supportive. I like when I said, like, right before COVID, like, my career had bottomed out, and I was like, what am I going to do? How am I going to build my own thing? And I looked at myself. I was like, as an artist, who am I? What am I? What do people like about my art? What do people like about me? What do I have to offer? And I knew, like, my love of craft is what made me kind of different, because I had a background in teaching.
Yeah.
And I mean, most artists love their craft, but I don't know that a lot of artists take a lot of time to dissect and dissect and dissect and spend, like, for me, the whole idea of making art is just a journey of discovery of, okay, well, if I use this tool,
Mhm.
or if I draw something this way, what does it mean next time? And so every time is kind of just like an exploration of understanding and learning. And so I was like, I think what I do is I'm a teacher. I'm focused on craft. I love comics and I love hip hop. So I was like, this is me. This is my lane. And
Yep.
looking at Jim again as like my beacon, I was like, Jim's done a very good job of that. So I need to lean into that stuff. So when the community started coming in, I was also I had just developed a whole logo and branding system with a really talented artist and designer. Um, and and he designed a whole branding package for me. And I was like, my slogan is, and I was listening to a marketing book at the time,
Yeah.
and it was funny because it said the best thing you can do is create a cause. And that way the cause is what the community focuses on, not you. So if you take a misstep, it's okay, because the cause didn't, you did.
Right.
And I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because the one thing I didn't want to do was be like a I hate to say this, cult of celebrity. Like, I didn't want it to be about me. I wanted it to be about something bigger than me, because I'm not about me. I'm about the craft.
Yeah.
So, and I also was looking at the time, this is a rough parallel to make, but like, I looked at what Trump did, like, make America great again. And it's such a stupid, simple idea, but it
Mhm.
got people behind it. But the thing is, it's meaningless. It's bottomless. Like, it's not out to make the country great again, but people believed in that cause. I was like, what if I had a cause that I actually believed in, that was really what I'm about? And Keep Craft Alive just seemed like it. And so I put it on a post one day, Keep Craft Alive, and my designer texted me immediately. He's like, that's your thing.
Mhm.
Lean into that. I was like, all right, well, you need to design the logo for that then, because everything's going to be about that. So when we had the live show and we were talking about tools and techniques and craft, like, people just were asking so many questions about it. I was like, this is great, because I was under the impression that we were losing the craft to what's fast, what's easy, digital media, quick turnaround, like, all, like, I just feel like the publishers in a self-survival tactic had created a need to, like, just get it done fast and get it out, because there was seemingly no attention to craft. and the mainstream books were just the quality and craft of them was just going down, down, down. The artists that were getting more and more popular were just giant shortcuts. It was like all I'd see is like, that's just a photograph with this filter thrown onto it, a hue
Yeah.
saturation adjustment layer here. And I saw a lot of that. And I was like, that's really disheartening.
Yeah.
Because to me, like, people would be like, well, why don't you just do that? I'm like, well, then it's just a job. Like, then my whole reason for doing this is gone. You know, it's just like, why don't I just go get a desk job at that point? Because it's the same thing. Like, I'm just pushing buttons.
Right.
And so I was like, I'm gonna double down on this craft thing. And I also was like, we're losing the giants of this. Like, they're getting older, you know, some are passing on, some are retiring.
Mhm.
I was like, we need to be documenting this. Like an interview with Klaus Janson talking about inking and like that stuff's going to be gone soon. And if we don't catch it, it's gone because
Yeah.
these younger kids don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
But what art history has taught me anything, it's that every movement is a rebellion against the popular movement. So while the popular movement was shortcuts, flashy computer trickery, the kids coming up underneath that were like,
Mm.
I want to go back to the old school. I want to learn this shit. And so they came out in droves for Inkpulp Live. And I was like, we have it. We have it. Like,
Yeah.
like, let's pass it on. So like this week, we had Eric Talbot on the show.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, Jim and I, after the show, we were texting for like an hour. Like, that was amazing. Like, Eric was incredible. The history of Mirage Comics he spoke on, the
Right.
craft, the fact that
Mhm.
we got someone to demonstrate Duo Shade live and it's recorded and will live in perpetuity on the channel
There's not a lot of that out
is
there.
amazing. Right.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
these kids are like, what is that? Where can I get it? I'm like,
You can't.
Yeah.
Right.
but if you guys love it enough,
Yeah.
one of you is going to figure out how to make it,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
not digitally. One of you is going to figure out
Right.
how to bring it back, and then there might be a market for it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
Dude, and I'm glad that you brought up Klaus Janson because, like, you talked about the point in which you pivoted from being an audio podcast to a visual, which was right around COVID, which a lot of our journeys, by the way, like
all
mimic
did,
that
yeah.
same
Yes,
thing,
absolutely.
basically,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
we needed connection during that time.
It was
and
the
all,
gold rush. It was
It
the
was.
gold rush. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But I think that like you tapped into something really special at that time when you had all those people on there because you had like Klaus Janson. Correct me if I'm wrong. You had Bill Sienkiewicz, Tommy Lee Edwards
No,
on.
we didn't have Bill. We had
Not
Tommy.
Bill. Okay,
We did have Tim Sale, which
Tim Sale.
again,
Okay.
Tim Sale
like,
was great.
we've lost Tim.
Yes.
But you can go to my channel and watch Tim. You know, he did ink along with us, and that it was a few times with Tim between my channel and my art dealer, the Essential Sequential channel. There's a bunch of Tim and me and Jim and Klaus
Klaus, yeah.
drawing together
It's
and
crazy.
talking.
It's
It's
nuts.
history. Like, we've captured that moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, exactly. And I think you guys did something that was similar, but like adjacent to what kayfabe was doing, right? Where they would break down the comic page itself, like in the format of
Yeah.
the comic. You guys are like creating the artwork that would become a comic right there on screen too. So it was like a really beautiful thing to experience from so many different like perspectives and viewpoints and like just angles on how they were creating that artwork. How, I guess, what was the impetus to then, like, when did you realize throughout that journey that, like, oh, this was the thing for the visual aspect of it? Like, what was the trigger point? How long did it take you?
For the live show?
Yeah.
Or for it was the first episode. I
Yeah,
mean,
it was
we
just,
were
like,
just like,
immediate?
let's just see how this goes, and it was instant. The questions that were coming in, the amount of people in the room on the first show, we got over 100 live viewers. The entire show, like, it never went down. Like, it might go down 2, it'd go up 3, go down 3, go up 1. Like, it just hovered there. And
Yeah.
we were like, "Oh, dude, we are onto something." And we were like, okay, so then we started talking, okay, how can we and I got a lot to say. So the question then was like, how can we tie this into maybe some history lessons? Let's
Yeah.
pick themes or artists and let's show books. And I remember we were I don't remember which episode it was, but I had just got like the artist edition of Sienkiewicz. It was like New Mutants and Electro Assassin, and
Oh,
we were just
yeah.
I was flipping through that on camera, and I
Crazy.
always went back to me being 16, what I wished I could have seen
Yeah.
and learned, because I grew up, there was no internet. Like, you'd see a Frank Miller comic, and maybe you were lucky to find, like, in Comics Interview, an interview with Frank Miller. I was lucky enough to hear him speak a couple times at San Diego Comic-Con when it was a tiny little show. But other than that, it was all guesswork. Like, you would
Yeah.
literally have to, like, stare at a comic book and try to figure it out. How did they
Mhm.
do that? Why did they do that? And so Jim and I were like, well, what can we do for that, those younger versions of ourselves? And so we were like, let's just start, like, showing work that we're looking at the time. And then people were asking, I don't even remember how this happened with our mailbag, but I think Jim just like, we were like, hey, once we realized we had a community growing, we're like, what can we do to help you guys? Because again, the cause is bigger than us.
Yeah.
The craft is what this is about. So you guys are all younger versions of us. What can we do to help you? And it was like, hey, I have a Kickstarter going. We just started throwing links up, and we would look at it on the show and try to send people, really try to help set, like drive people to it, and hopefully help the Kickstarter campaign. And then Jim was like, hey, I got a PO box, because people asking, hey, can I mail you a comic?
Mhm.
And so Jim started having a PO box that we now have in the description of every show. And we were blown away, because I'd say 99% of everything that was sent to us, virtually or physically, we were like, I remember the show would end and Jim would be like, dude, this work is awesome. Like, he
Yeah.
was like, I
Yeah.
was worried. Like, what if we got a really, like an egg? Like, what if we just got
Yeah.
something stinky? Like, what are we going to do? Like, we're not fake people. We're genuine.
Yeah.
And I think that's the heart of everything with Inkpulp, is it's genuine. It's not a performance. But we were just like, there's a whole underground movement about to happen, and we're kind of at the, like, forefront of it, and let's use this vehicle to lift it. And so then it became like, let's show off what other people are doing, let's do what we're doing. And then we started bringing in guests, and it was just like, okay, this is now something so much bigger than we ever intended it to be. And then, like, Jim just went to Greece, and in Athens, there's this incredible underground comics movement. And he came back with a stack that he
Mm.
showed on the stream this week. And it was
Mhm.
like, these kids are doing it. So it feels like, um, I don't know if I'm aging myself, but you guys are probably a lot younger than me. It feels like the 80s, where you had, like, like the Ninja Turtles were being created, Love and Rocket, Stray Bullets, like
Yeah.
this black and white self-published underground movement is happening again.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really healthy sign for the medium. So we're just about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
awesome, man. Yeah, and it's like I'm glad you mentioned the Kickstarter thing too earlier on too, because like one of the predictions that we had, like we kind of saw the writing on the wall with the
Yeah.
traditional comic, format
Mhm.
too, and then Diamond news came down the pipeline. But one of the things we said was that like we're gonna see a boom of Kickstarters. Like we're gonna see an
Yeah.
absolute ton of great, incredible like creativity that's gonna be coming down the pipeline. Maybe not
Yep.
traditionally done in comics, not the big two, but like something
Right.
arguably better. So I'm so encouraged to hear that.
Well, I was just going to ask about yeah, just the hip hop connection in the early days. I was just curious, how did you connect with the guys from Farside TV, and how did that match happen? And how did you find an
Uh,
early home there?
that's a good story.
Yeah.
So I was chatting. I was really good friends with the editor in chief of Marvel, Axel Alonso, when he was editor in chief,
Mhm.
and we became so close because we connected way well before I worked. Like, I have a picture of his son and my daughter when they were like not even a year, like hanging out together,
That's
and
cool.
they're both 22 now. So we connected over hip hop. Like, I found out he was really into it. He found I was really into it. So we're just sending each other music for years. And at cons, it was like I could go to the Marvel. I wasn't working for Marvel yet. I would just go to the Marvel booth to talk to Axel. Like, it wasn't like I was trying to get work. It was like, oh, he's just a cool dude, and we connect. It eventually ended up with him getting me in at Marvel and giving me work, but that's where that was our baseline. And I actually ended up bringing tech of Smith and Wesson to the Marvel offices, and
Yes.
he nerded out. Like I have a picture of him holding the Thor hammer from the movie.
That's so dope.
So, anyways, fast forward. Axel was like, I have an idea. I want to do like these covers that are really for the hip hop community, because there's a big crossover between hip hop and comics. And he's like, I don't want this to feel like somebody taking advantage of the culture, because you and I are part of this culture, and I want to make it feel like that. I want to do like great hip hop covers for our number ones, but it has to be, he was like, it has to be strategic, and like the story has to match the cover. So he was like, so I'm going to do this. So he's like, I want you to be part of this from the start. He gave me 3 to choose from. I don't remember what they were, except the Far Side.
Yes.
Because the minute I saw that Bizarre Ride to the Far
man.
Side was
Yeah.
on the list, I was like, that's one of my favorite records ever. That's it.
It's
And
such
it
a
was
great
Guardians of
cover.
the Galaxy.
Mhm.
Thank you. Oh yeah, the original cover is insane. And it's honestly, it's like one of the few examples of like hand-drawn hip-hop covers where the art is really good.
Right.
Because there's a lot of bad ones.
There are.
And that one's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's OG Slick. And it was real. So I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. Guardians of the Galaxy, Far Side is perfect. So when it got announced, I'm getting DMs from the Far Side. They're loving it. They're asking about it, and we're talking back and forth. And then Booty Brown was like, hey, I want to talk to you about something. My manager's going to reach out to you. So and this Greg reached out to me, and he was like, hey, we want to do something with you with the Far Side. And the Far Side was down to 2 members at this point. It was Brown and Imani. And I was like, I'd love to, and we just like, and then it kind of like fizzed out, and then it came back right when COVID hit. Like I remember right before COVID hit, I was in my studio, and I got a DM from Brown saying, I want to hop on a call with you and my manager. And then like I hung up the phone, and then I got a call from Killer Mike talking about a project he wanted to do. And I remember I was just like right here laying on the floor, like, what the fuck is
Yes.
happening? This is
That's
crazy.
awesome.
And so I got on the phone with Brown and Greg Smooch, his manager, and they're like, we want to do we want your art for our next single. We want to put you on the cover. And they sent it to me, and I couldn't believe, I hadn't heard the Far Side sound that good since the first album, but it was also a very different sound. It was dark, it was psychedelic, it was hard, not in the lyrics, but in the depth of what they were saying. It was dark. Like this was not the like flowery Far Side I knew.
Yeah.
I mean, in Lab Cabin, California, you could see some darkness creeping in, but then they break up, and it's just I could never get a footing for what they were going
Yeah.
for it. But
Mm.
this, like the beat was so wicked. I just would listen to it over and over. Like this is like, I was like, Far Side's going to come back huge with this. And so we started talking every day about what it was. And then COVID hit. So we would have weekly Zoom meetings, me and Brown and Mike Realm, who was their DJ and also made the beat for the song. So then we started talking about this high concept of take the idea of the Gorillas, which Brown was a part of, and apply it to just hip hop, where you have these fictional characters that are the rappers, is the DJ. And then it was like, wait a minute, this isn't a single. This is a new band.
Yeah.
And that's when we created the Stack Machine. And through COVID, this is one of the projects that I just was focused on. There was no money. Like we were just like, we're 3 artists doing this because we love it.
Yeah.
And we created the Stack Machine, and we got Del the Funky Homo Sapien on the first single, which was that original Far Side song I heard.
Yes.
But what happened was when they sent it to me, it was Brown and Imani. And the further we got into this idea of the Stack Machine, Imani was just out. He was like, I'm not going there. And he left. And then it was like, all right, well, let's just have every song have a guest rapper and we'll do a character design for them. And so Dell and Brown made some calls and Dell was on board immediately. And I remember we were Zooming with Dell and I was just geeking out.
Hell
But
yeah.
the best thing was the first Zoom with Dell. I mean, he was nerding out on my art, but he's like, dude, I just watched this documentary on EC Comics. I was like, those are my favorite comics. So like we're having this business meeting about the Stack Machine, but Dell and I are just talking about EC Comics for a half an hour.
Yeah.
And so I went and watched that documentary. I was like, this is awesome. And then we had a meeting with Pharoah Monch, Lyrics Born, like all these people are going to be involved. So we did the first track. We released it on Spotify, but we couldn't get people's eyes on it. Like this is what kind of led to Keep Craft Alive. I was like, we can't just make good shit now. Like there's so much attention, so many things out there crying for attention. How do you get noticed?
Yeah.
And so it was like, we need marketing. And we strategized on marketing and talked about hiring people, but we had spent years at this point building this and we didn't have money. COVID had happened and all our careers were like bottomed out. We're like, we need to like build again. And so it just kind of fizzled. And then we did a second track that was just Brown, me and Mike that we put out on Spotify. So it's all on Spotify under the Stack Machine. It's just 2 tracks, but we all love it. And every few months we all like, we have a little group text. We're like, guys, like I still believe in this. And we do.
Yeah.
It's just, I had to turn all my attentions to Inkpulp to build my business. Brown had to turn all his attentions his way. Mike Realm, who was, making a living as like a live DJ, well, COVID wiped that out. And then that industry is going through the same shit as our industry, where these young kids are just pressing a button and they're a DJ.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So it was like, we can get this kid for half the price. And Mike's like, yeah, but they're not DJing. So we all are just we were in survival mode, trying to survive. And I'm at a point where all of my 5 years of work is just starting to work. And by April, May, I think I'll finally be like, I'll have like a nest egg of money coming in. I'll be like, okay, I can slow my shit down a little bit. Cause right now I'm worn out. 5 years of doing all this has been crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 7 days a week. It's all day. It's all night. I mean, I'm in bed falling asleep answering Discord messages. Like, but happily so. I'm not complaining. It's like,
Eric, stop hitting him up on Discord all the time.
Yeah. I'm a proud paying patron.
Thank you very much.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Thank you. I am blown away by Discord.
It's incredible.
Blown away. But just by the community. Cause like, I was like, me and Jim and Mateo and our producer, Jamie, were all talking. Jamie was always for this. He's a younger kid. He understands it. And I would look at Discord and be like, dude, I don't know if I have time for this. Like, we're going to have to like engage with everyone and answer everything. And then we were like, let's just give it a try. And day one, when I finally opened it and saw the art share, there was all these people sharing their art. They weren't waiting to hear from me or Mateo or Jim. They were all talking to each other. I was like, the community went from like fans and us to just a completely unified unit. And I'm like, oh my God, this community's been dying for this.
It's just been sitting there the whole time. They're just waiting for you to set it up, and then they'll take it and run with it. All you got to do is say,
I had no idea.
Yeah,
I had no idea.
It's incredible.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, that kind of goes back. It's like, you were saying before, it's like you can't only just be an artist now. It's like you need that marketing, that self-marketing appetite. And I think the technology and tools and everything is obviously amplifying all that, and it's making it easier and easier for somebody to do something like that.
Right.
I mean, look what you guys have been doing with the podcast and everything, and obviously with the Discord and everything. It's just increasing your brand and getting that awareness out there, bringing all these people together. Where before we were just watching YouTube videos, maybe a podcast here and there. I can watch the guys talk about Ames guides and different nibs and stuff. But now I'm over at Inkpulp now, watching you do like some amazing inking and things like that. So delicate and so amazing, and you're putting together this whole package for education.
It's another avenue.
Juxtapose that to like what Jim's doing with his sketchy and just like raw art style. And then I'm watching Jorge Corona on your channel a couple weeks ago, and he's doing some crazy stuff too. And you guys are just nerding out on process and tools. And
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. We are just nerding out. That's
yeah,
exactly it.
and that's it. And you're mentioning a gap with kayfabe. It's like as a Thursday weekly warrior sitting there in those live streams watching those guys do that live for years. It's
Yeah.
like, we miss that as an audience too, and we always have that back catalog, and it's amazing. But it's so good to see guys like yourself, not, as you said, filling the gap intentionally, but just understanding that that's a avenue and there's an
Yeah.
audience for that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
your intention does not come across as you're filling a gap purposefully. Your intention is you have a lot to share and you want to keep that craft alive, like you said,
Yeah.
and you
I
have
think.
to put that out there.
Yeah. I think exactly. I think kayfabe. Those guys were so ahead of the curve and such visionaries. They tapped into something brand new that was like, it's like everyone was waiting for this, not knowing it.
Right.
And they did such a good job of tapping into it. And what they did was showed us all like, hey guys, here's a way.
Yeah.
Here's a thing to do. And like you had mentioned, like with all these platforms and avenues, I was watching through COVID, watching a lot of artists, not all, but a lot of artists complaining about, now I have to do videos, now I have to do
Sure.
this.
Sure.
Whereas I was like, well, wait a minute. I don't have to, but now I can.
And you
Like
get
now
to.
it was like,
Yeah.
yeah, now there's a chance. Like I was always from day one wanting to write and draw my own comics.
Yeah.
And coming up in the industry I came up in, I saw Miller's Sin City, I saw Mignola's Hellboy,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, okay, go make a name for yourself at Marvel and DC. I saw what the Image guys did,
Right.
and then use that celebrity or that name to then go do your thing, and you'll get a publisher behind you. Well, times have changed.
Yeah.
Don't need a publisher, and you don't need to work for the big two to get a name for yourself. So now there's an opportunity to be completely independent. If
Mm-hmm.
you utilize these resources and play their little algorithm games, instead
Yeah.
of getting mad at it, study it, look at it.
Mm-hmm.
How can I make it work? Because it's not set up to hurt you. It's set up for, like, Instagram's algorithm is like, what's going to make us Instagram the most money? They're a business. It makes sense. So for someone like me, it's like, all right, it's free. What can I do to exploit their algorithm to my gain?
Right.
And not put too much into it to where if it disappears, my whole business is gone.
Yeah.
So it became this idea of funneling. And this came from the podcast. That's the other thing. The podcast with Mateo and Eric was very much like a lesson for me, but also we've recorded like a how-to for everyone. So, people like Carl Kerschel came on and they just started talking about this funnel where like you use your social media to get people to your newsletter or to your website, which gets people to your newsletter. So if Instagram pops away, you've got them on your own
Sure.
space.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what everything's been about.
Yeah.
And it's just been, it's like, for me, it's like you guys said, it's like a gold rush. Like, okay, I can be fully independent. It's taken me 5 years and it's right in front of me. Like I can see it now. I've been building towards this. I've tried 80 million things, 5 worked. But that's what you have
But
to do.
that's the
Like,
game.
Yeah.
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 Absolutely.
yeah. And honestly, failure is the best way to
Mhm.
success. It just, you learn what doesn't work, and then that helps you learn what does
Without
work.
a
It's
doubt.
just that simple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there's a cool thing that happens too, because as we've seen recently, like you could scratch every single itch too, because like you talked about, like traditionally before it was like you go to the big two, you make a name for yourself and then you
Mhm.
blow up. Well, now we get to have our cake and eat it too, because like the bootleg aspect of these characters, because like regardless of whether you
Yeah.
want to work for Marvel, I think we all kind of love Spider-Man a little bit, but now you don't need to
Of
work for
course.
Marvel to make Spider-Man. We've
Right.
seen like Monty Keene make bootleg Spider-Man. We see Jim doing it on
Dude,
the street.
Marty is a
He's a
beast.
beast on his
Yes.
own, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Marty, I always tell him this, and he gets bashful, but I'm always like, dude, you're the future, man.
Yeah,
Like,
man.
like everyone needs to be following what you're doing because you are leading the brigade on how to do this. Like, Marty is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
We'll
that.
cut that out. Don't worry.
Yeah.
No, he's a friend of the show. So
Yeah, we love that dude.
Yeah.
Marty's the best.
Yeah, so to have someone like Marty really get behind what we're doing
Yeah.
really means a lot to me, because it's like I come from punk rock, I come from hip hop, I come from counterculture and underground comics, counterculture. And sure, I went corporate to try to get back to counterculture. And then it was like, oh, I don't need to go through corporate. I can just sidestep and go counterculture. And I look at Mahdi as like the youth, like center of that counterculture movement in comics. And if he's believing in what we're doing, it says to me we're doing something right.
Yeah, and a big part of his success is not only his talent and everything, but his usage of collaborating with other folks and the connection, obviously, with Cartoonist Kayfabe. So, I mean, and you guys are setting up that platform as well for these younger artists, these underground comics to come
Absolutely.
in here and showcase their work. Hell, even on the Discord, like you said, that art share. I mean, like the eyes
Yeah.
that these people are getting on their work now is
Yeah.
way
And
more
we,
than
we
they
have
ever
a
did.
self promo channel too. It's like,
Exactly. Yeah. So
put all
like,
your Instagrams here. Like, go follow each other. Like, let's do this. Let's
so you
be a
cannot
team.
like undersell like your guys' importance in this whole machine right now. You know what I mean? It's just it's really great work that you guys are doing and giving a voice to
Oh,
everybody, as well as building your own brand at the same time. It's a win-win for everybody. So it's
yeah,
just
I agree. I
incredible to look
agree.
at.
And I do feel like it's a responsibility. Like,
Yeah.
I've tried to help out artists my entire time while I was in the industry. I've always tried to help people get up, and they'd always like thank me. I'm like, just the only thing I ask of you is return this favor to someone. It was a pro said it to me, and it really, when I was trying to get in, I don't remember who it was. Um, it might have been Phil Hester, but Phil really helped me out and was like, just make sure you continue this. Like, this is important to help. And so I always had that in my mind. And as a teacher, I always had that in my mind, because I love seeing people shine.
Yeah.
And so I do think it is like it's a responsibility that when you have people looking your way, to use that platform, not just for you, but for the craft, for others, for everything. And it just makes the whole like community thing really nice. And on a macro level outside of comics, I feel like what's happened, and COVID would just decimated this. What was happening before COVID was the erosion of community. Like, I grew up in a world where when I was out playing after school as a kid and it was dinner time, my mom could open the door and just yell,
Yeah.
Shawn, Jordan, dinner time. And the neighbor across the street could hear it and see I was in their backyard and be like, Shawn, your mom's calling you. It's your dinner time.
Yeah.
And it was like the community kept an eye on each other and looked out for each other. And like, I remember I came home one day, like I busted my hand open on a rock and it was blood everywhere. And my dad had the car at work, and I came with my mom. She went to our neighbors and our neighbor took us to the hospital. Like,
Yeah.
we knew our neighbors. We were all friendly with our neighbors. We had block parties. Like, that was such a beautiful thing to have, community. And I think as human beings, like even going back to tribal days, like community is everything.
Yeah.
And once that's gone, well, look where we are now.
Yeah.
And so COVID just really wiped it clean. And I was just like, I was learning sociologically what was happening because of the erosion of community. And then I was looking at comics because it became very selfish. Like the publishers became very selfish, the artists became very selfish, and
Yeah.
the writers, and I was like, this sucks, man.
Mhm.
And I had my little crew of friends. I was like, that's my community. But it was through podcasting where I realized my little community people loved. And I was like, well, we could grow that to include everyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if we all did this, the world would just be a better place.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah, it was like a forced evolution that it like pushed us all into, which was like kind of a beautiful thing at the end, but going through the process was a little bit painful. I wanted,
True.
yeah, I wanted to talk to you about something that you mentioned here too. Specifically, like some of the impetus of all of this was the fact that you were a teacher.
Yeah.
I've noticed that like throughout every endeavor that you've had, whether it be the podcast, whether it be Inkpulp instruction, whether it be your time at SCAD, education is a huge facet for all that stuff. Even just an episode of one of the not recent episodes, but like sometime in the near past where you were talking about burnout in the industry. I'm not a
Mhm.
creative. I
Yeah.
don't like draw comics or anything like that, but I was able to take away something from that episode in my own career and personal life where I'm like, yeah, those things that you're talking about are so important.
Mhm.
What keeps that fire lit for you to continue being an educator even though it's outside of maybe a traditional scope?
That's a good question. It's something I've thought about a lot. I was just me, my DNA. I have a curious mind. Everything I've got into as a kid was like an investigation. So I got into hip hop. I didn't just listen to it casually. I wanted to know who this was, where they were from, what were they saying, and not just the rappers, but graffiti, and it's that nerd mentality of like I want to understand everything. It's like it's a whole universe, and like my first passion as a kid was sharks, no dinosaurs first, and that's what got me drawing
Of course.
because I wanted books on dinosaurs. I wanted to know what different types of dinosaurs there were. I wanted to know like how they looked and how they operated and and so I draw that. Then it was sharks, and then it was like I'm going to be a marine biologist, and because I had books I would just have fun like being like that's a thresher shark, that's a mako shark,
Mhm.
and getting to know that. And then when I discovered like the Spider-Man cartoon, it was like animation. That's what I want to do.
Mhm.
But so I always had this mind that was curious, thirsty for knowledge, I'll say. So that's just how I was wired. And then when I was like, but I was a very shy kid. And when I was like 17, 18, I took a summer job as a camp counselor at an art camp and realized, as shy as I was, I did have a knack for teaching because the
Mhm.
way my mind worked, I wanted to understand everything. If I was able to be in front of people and just open that lock in my head of like, oh, I understand this, there were like the shyness just evaporated because I was passionate about it. I was like, oh, I love talking about this.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, this is kind of like a natural thing I have. Like the ability to like my love of understanding what I do allows me the ability to communicate it well. And it's all just driven by the passion of it. Whereas I know a lot of artists where like they love what they do, they understand what they do, but they don't have the passion for then passing that forward. Whereas I just did. So I started doing like after school art programs, and it was just kind of always there. I was like, I like this. Like this is a good way to make some money. I'm having fun. But I always had the mentality like I'm really like nobody to be teaching this. Like I don't have like a career in this. I don't have a background in this, but I have enough that I could help like a young kid. No, I didn't have that. I didn't have like a mentor I could go to. So when I got out of undergrad and I was really like trying to get a comics career going, again, there was no internet, or the internet was brand new. I didn't know what I was doing. I still didn't know what a comic was. I hadn't like read the Will Eisner text. I hadn't discovered that. I went to my first San Diego Comic-Con, got a portfolio review, and Understanding Comics and Graphic Novels by Will Eisner was mentioned. So I went back and read it. It was like, oh,
Yeah.
whoa, okay. I don't know what I'm doing at all. So that opened up that idea. I want to understand this because I was like looking through like Image Comics, like these are just really cool
Look at
drawings.
the
And
size
let's
of
just
that gun. Yeah.
yeah, just put this drawing next to that drawing and it's a comic. And it's
Right.
like, no, it's not it at all.
Yeah.
So that just opened up that door of like, oh, I really want to learn and understand this. And
Mhm.
that's when I went to grad school. One reason was to learn and understand it. The other reason was an MFA will allow me the ability to teach. So, after a few years of like not getting anywhere and looking like this might take a while, how am I going to have a career? How am I going to have a life? I mean, I was 26 at the time and I was like, I want to do comics, but this might be a while. So I don't want to go do
Mhm.
graphic design. I could teach. So I went and got my MFA and at SCAD in Savannah, and got my first comics job while I was in school. And I was like, this is great. I can teach and work in comics.
Hmm.
And when I got out of school, that's what I did. And then it just got to a point
Right.
where SCAD was opening an Atlanta campus. I was teaching part-time at the Art Institute of Atlanta. And me and my buddy Pat were like, we graduated from there, like, let's just go for it. And they basically handed us the sequential art department in Atlanta to build from scratch. So we built the whole program and taught there. And then Pat got bumped up to a dean like within the first year. And then that pushed me up to like run this department of me. And we hired one adjunct. And it grew from there. And I was doing that. And then my Marvel career was starting to really take off. And I was doing both. And I almost broke myself. Like running a department, teaching all the classes on a startup school, the amount of hours they wanted from me, and then the amount of hours Marvel wanted from me. It was intense, to say the least. So I just hit a point where I was like, I can't keep doing this. So when contract renegotiations came up at SCAD, I was like, look, I don't want to leave, but I can't keep going this way. Like, there's a lot of things SCAD was asking of me. Like, we need you in your office on Fridays just to sit there.
Just in
if
case.
anyone has, if anyone has a question, they can just pop in.
Yeah.
So I was like, look, I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for time. I was like, I need my Fridays back to be in my studio. If a student wants to see me, I will be available for appointments, but I can't just waste time sitting there. And, they thought I was bluffing. And I was like, I won't sign the contract if you guys can't give me that. And SCAD was like, all right, this is our offer. It's not changing. And I was like, okay, I'm out of here. And I think they were like, wait, what? I was like, I'm not going to do this.
Right.
I told you what I needed. I don't want to leave, and me being here is a benefit for you, because here's the other thing. I was in the process, and Marvel was behind this 100%. We had a plan, and I put this in front of SCAD. It was called Marvel University.
Yeah, sounded very cool.
Where I was going to lead a class. I was going to lead a class where Axel would come down at the beginning of the quarter and assign a short story to everyone, written by, Jason Aaron or one of their writers. I was going to edit and help them get through this entire short story. And at the end of the quarter, Axel was going to come back for the final pieces. And we'd have meetings, like conference calls throughout the semester for feedback, so they could learn not just from me, but from Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end, Axel was going to pick, a couple of people and put them in an anthology called Marvel University. So it was a direct pipeline for SCAD to be like, we have an exclusive thing with Marvel Comics. You come to SCAD, you study sequential art, you can get in a Marvel comic. It didn't matter.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
That didn't matter.
Is there anything, or has there been anything like that in comics before, like a direct pipeline type avenue?
No. When I was in grad school at SCAD in Savannah, Dark Horse would come down, and it wasn't like a setup thing, but if they saw in senior project something they really liked, they would put it in Dark Horse Presents. But it only happened to like 3 kids. It wasn't like every quarter they were doing this. It was just like they would come down. Like SCAD had this thing called Editors Day, where they'd bring editors in for portfolio reviews. And every now and then someone would get work. So when Dark Horse came down, if they saw a senior project, which was a short story, senior project was do your own short story. If they saw something they liked, they'd be like, hey, we're going to put this in Dark Horse Presents. But
I wonder how far in the Dark Horse Presents that was. I'm trying to even think.
This would have been in, because I remember Chris Brunner got in there. Isaac, I forget Isaac's last name, got his senior project in there.
Interesting.
And I think Brett Welderly might have got his senior project in there, but that was about it. I don't think there was a lot more than that.
Like, I'm published next to Mobius. It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like, what? Hold on a second.
Talk about exposure,
And then I don't think they published Murphy's senior project, but they did give him work from his senior project, like his first few jobs at Dark Horse.
Wow.
Nice. Well, you have something coming down the pipeline here. I'm not sure how much you can share about it, but like, can you tell us about the project?
Yeah. With Jake Parker.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've got a few things to talk about. This is all the stuff I've been building. So I spent all this time building Inkpulp instruction, and it never really performed great. I made all these videos. I recorded videos with other artists, like all instructional, and I still stand by them. I think they're the best instructional things out there. But this is a good lesson. It was a great lesson for me and good lesson for other people to hear that just because you have like, this is how it's going to work, doesn't mean it's going to work this way. It might go this way and come out much further ahead than you ever saw it. So I was like kind of like down about it. And I was like, I put all my time and all my money into this during and after COVID. And I really I've gotten anywhere with it. And I get a email from Jake Parker, who I'd never met. I knew Jake's work, and I had seen that he had a school, and he was like, "Hey man, I'd love to come on the podcast." And he's like, "Also, I want to talk to you about teaching art online, like just kind of compare notes." And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to," because I didn't know how well he was doing. I was struggling, and so we talked, and I found out his school was doing incredible. But the real reason he wanted to talk was he saw what I was doing. And he's like, I want to do a comics class, but I don't want to do it alone. I want to do it with someone from that world, like who's
Great.
really embedded in that
Yeah.
world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, and he started telling me the numbers he was making. I was like, oh my God. Like,
Like,
yeah. So, and
I guess, yeah.
yeah. And that was the first thing I was like, yeah, I'll do this. So it's like, I have the potential now of making more money with Inkpulp Instruction than I ever did, not through Inkpulp Instruction, but because the
Mhm.
optics it gave me. But it's also like working, like Jake's school has like over 100,000 students. Doesn't
Oh,
mean they
Wow.
all sign up for every class,
Wow,
but their
sure.
newsletter is like 150,000 big.
Yeah.
And so I get to expose Inkpulp Instruction to them. But not only that, through putting the class together, I got to know Jake. We became good friends, and I love Jake. He's an amazing human. He's an incredible artist, but he's like me in that he's mentally curious and
Mhm.
loves passing on that information. So on May 1st, we've been building this class for about a year and a half now. May 1st, we're launching it, but it's going to be the way his school is operating now is they're going to have trimesters every year. So every year you're going to offer a class 3 times. So this year, the first trimester, our class isn't part of it, just launched like last week. But the second trimester and the third trimester, we will have our class. And moving forward, it'll just be part of it. So once I've built it, like it's taken a year and a half to build,
Mhm.
once it's built, we can just plug and play. Like it's good to go. So it's because of that and a few other things. And I'm like, okay, this is going to all support me and I can do my own comics finally. So on May 1st, we got Jake's the SVS Inkpulp team up class. It's called Graphic Novel Pro. And I'm sure we'll start advertising soon. Jake and I are going to start recording the lessons next week.
dude, that's awesome. That's really
And
exciting. I bet
yeah,
he's giving you
super
Fridays in
stoked.
the office too.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
totally. But that's the thing is like when I built Inkpulp Instruction, I had applied to go back to SCAD. Like I was really at the bottom and I was not happy about it. And like I just ate humble pie. I was like, I'll apply. And they were putting me through the ringer as if I'd never taught there before. And I was like, you people are awful. Like I'm coming back to you now after having worked on Batman, like all
Right.
these titles,
Mhm.
like, and you're putting me through the ringer. And I remember I went into the bathroom after my guest lecture that I had to give for the interview process. And I saw someone I used to teach with, and they looked at me like white, like they're like, what are you doing here? Like
Why are you
they're
back?
like, you got out. Why are you back? Because
Oh my
it
god.
is it is an awful place. It really is an awful place. I don't know anyone there that loves it there. It's awful.
Wow.
But that I was like, I saw that, I was like, what am I doing here? And I was like, why do I need them? Like, this is the shift in thinking. It's thinking, and this is whenever someone asks me, like, how do I become a pro? I was like, just be a pro. You've got the internet. Just start making comics.
Yeah.
Make a web comic. Guess
Yeah.
what? You're a pro. You
Yep.
did it. You have a comic out. Be consistent and do it. And you're a pro. So I was like, wait a minute. I've got the resources. I know how to podcast. I know how to do these things. I could just make my own like videos and just sell them. Like I don't need a school to pay me for like, because they're never going to pay me what I'm worth.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so that's when I backed out. I didn't even continue with the application process. I was like, I'm out. And that's why I said I'm going to build Inkpulp instruction. So, I put everything into it. Then when it wasn't working, that was rough. But now I see it did work. I'm doing this thing with Jake, and it's going to be huge.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
You never
Yeah,
know how you're going to launch off of something, So
Hmm.
yeah, and
exactly. Yes.
it goes right back to your, you don't need the traditional way of kind of rising in this medium. It's just not necessarily the only path forward, and we've covered that already on here. But you're doing your own thing and creating your own, courses and self-published. It's just incredible, the
Yeah.
different options
Thank
that
you.
people have right now. So I mean, if you guys are
Yeah. It's
interested.
amazing.
Mhm.
It's amazing.
And if
Go
you
ahead.
guys
Go
are
ahead.
interested in Inkpulp instructions, you have tons of videos already out there, from basic composition, storytelling,
Yeah.
shapes,
Ton.
Hmm.
fundamentals of line, basic
Yeah.
perspective. You have some free courses on YouTube as well to kind of give
I
you a
do.
taste of what you
I
can
do.
expect. I love I think you had an inking one, if I'm not mistaken. It was
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
incredible stuff. So
Thank
none
you.
of your
Yeah.
efforts go to waste. How about that?
Are we gonna get a brick and mortar
Thank you.
one day,
Thank you.
like
Yeah.
the Kubert School? We're gonna get a
There you go.
I don't know. What I've thought about, and maybe I'll get there one day. I just the time I have, I don't have time, but I thought it'd be really cool to travel around and do weekend workshops.
Yeah.
It's something Jake has
That's
done a little
awesome.
bit of,
Yeah.
and we've talked about, but it would be nice to be like, hey, I'm going to be in Phoenix, Arizona this weekend for a weekend intensive in, storytelling, and maybe I could do it with like a guest, like maybe like, hey, me and Eric are going to do this in Portland, and
Hmm.
sign up and we'll do it. So that sort of stuff I'm interested in. But
Yeah.
I feel like, right now it's an interesting time where you can, if you're self-driven enough, there are videos that can really help you. But the way Jake's doing the school is pretty interesting because it is set up where you just watch videos and do projects. But once a week, we have a live call with everyone in the class like this, where we're there to answer the questions. Because I'm really not a fan of online learning. When I was at SCAD, they're always like, well, will you teach an online class? I was like, no, I need to be hands on. But I'm confident that my ability to communicate information and demonstrate through video is helpful enough. And that I think what Jake's offering with the calls is like just that little missing piece. So I'm thinking about it. And now with the Inkpulp community, like with what Jim and Mateo and I are doing, I'm wondering like, hmm, what can we do with this? But that's future. Like that's what I like about all this is I'm always having ideas, and I'm just like, let me see. Like now I've learned for the first time in my life to just sit back and observe, and I'll see the opportunities instead of trying to force opportunities.
Yeah. Well, and that's been one of the coolest parts about the entire journey of Ink Pulp itself. It's all been about evolution. It's been taking that next step over and over, whether it be from the educational standpoint or going from audio to video, all of it, or building the community itself, man. So it's been an exciting journey to actually like be a part of here and kind of, see evolve and grow. So I can't wait to see what that next part is.
Thank you. Thank you.
But Shawn, I think we're at the hour mark here, man, and I want to appreciate you
Awesome.
being here and respect your time here. Thank you so much for joining
Thank
us.
you.
Is there anything
Thank
that we
you.
missed here, man? Well, the Patreon, the Discord links are going to be down in the description below.
Awesome. Yeah, I have
What are
a
we
few
missing
things.
though?
Okay, a few shout outs. Inkpulp.tv is my website. Please go there, sign up for my newsletter. That's kind of like the heart of everything we're doing at Inkpulp. And also on my website, there's a section for Inkpulp instruction where you can just buy videos. So head
Yeah,
there.
man.
So look for on March 1st, I'm launching the landing page for my Kickstarter. It's going to be my new art book, but unlike
Yes.
other art books,
Yeah.
it's not like, hey, here's my art. It's here's my art, and here's what every step, thumbnail, pencils, inks, painting.
Nice.
Here's what I was thinking. Here's what I was going for. Here's what I was attempting, where I succeeded, where I failed. So it's going to be a craft, a book on my craft, not just my art.
That's awesome.
And if you go sign up for the on the landing page, just sign up for the notification when it goes live on April 1st. If you sign up early and you pledge at any level or a certain level, I'm figuring that out now. you'll get my free new sketchbook, not my art book, but my sketchbook PDF.
Nice. Okay. Is there a pre-launch page already up?
Building it right now.
Sweet.
It'll
Okay.
go up March 1. It'll go up March 1.
That's March 1. Awesome. Cool. Well, Shawn, again, man, thank you so much for your time. This has been a blast. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Here. And we're out.